The email hit my inbox like a slap across the face. You're no longer welcome here. Emma. Pack your things by Friday. My sister-in-law, Claire, had typed those words with the same cold precision she used to siphon $1.800 from my remote job every month. I sat frozen at my makeshift desk in their attic. The hum of my laptop the only sound in the suffocating silence. For 2 years, I'd lived with Claire and my brother, Mark, in their pristine suburban home, paying them rent that wasn't rent money Claire demanded to cover expenses while I rebuilt my life after a brutal divorce. I thought we were family, that their open door was a lifeline. But Claire's email revealed the truth. I was a tenant, a cash cow, and now, an inconvenience. It started innocently enough. After my ex-husband drained our joint account and left me with nothing but a suitcase and a shattered ego, Mark offered me their attic room. Stay as long as you need, he'd said, his kind eyes crinkling. Claire nodded along, her smile tight, but I was too desperate to notice the warning signs. I landed a remote tech support job, pulling in a decent $4.500 a month. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. Then Claire sat me down one evening, her manicured nails tapping the kitchen counter. We're family, Emma, but living here isn't free. $1.800 a month covers your share utilities, groceries, everything. I didn't question it. I trusted her. I handed over the money every month, wiring it directly to her account, believing I was contributing to the household. But the math never added up. I cooked my own meals, used minimal electricity, and barely touched their fancy amenities. $1.800 was more than half my income, leaving me scraping by while Claire bought designer bags and Mark upgraded his car. I ignored the red flags, chalking it up to their lifestyle. I didn't want to rock the boat, not when I was still piecing myself back together. Then came the email. I reread it, my stomach churning. Pack your things by Friday. No explanation, no warning, just Claire's curt dismissal. I stumbled downstairs, clutching my phone, and found her in the kitchen, sipping wine like nothing was wrong. Claire, what's this about? I asked, my voice trembling. She didn't even look up. We need the space. Emma, it's time for you to move on. Move on. I've been paying you $1.800 a month. I thought we were helping each other. Her eyes flicked to me, cold and unyielding. You've been a burden long enough. Find somewhere else. Mark stood in the doorway, avoiding my gaze. My brother, my protector, said nothing. The betrayal cut deeper than Claire's words. I'd been pouring my earnings into their hands, thinking I was family, while they'd been bleeding me dry. And now they were tossing me out like trash. I stormed back to the attic, my mind racing. I couldn't afford a new place, not with my savings gutted by their rent. But as I stared at my bank account, a spark of defiance ignited. If Claire thought she could discard me after milking me for thousands, she was about to learn who she was dealing with. I wasn't the broken woman who'd arrived here 2 years ago. I opened my laptop and pulled up my banking app. With one click, I canceled the recurring $1.800 transfer to Claire's account. If they wanted me gone, fine. But I wasn't paying another cent. The next morning, I started digging. Claire's email had mentioned needing the space, but something felt off. I checked her social media, expecting nothing. But there it was, a photo of her and Mark standing in front of a new home office setup in what used to be my attic. They hadn't just kicked me out, they'd planned to repurpose my space while I was still living in it. Rage bubbled up, but I pushed it down. I needed a plan, not a meltdown. I spent the day scouring my options. My job was remote, so I could work from anywhere with Wi-Fi. I found a cheap studio apartment 2 towns over. Barely affordable, but doable if I cut every non-essential expense. The deposit would wipe out what little I had left, but I'd make it work. I always had. By evening, I'd packed my belongings into 3 suitcases, my laptop tucked securely in my backpack. I didn't tell Claire or Mark I was leaving early. Let them think I'd begged to stay. As I loaded my car, I overheard Claire on the phone, laughing. Yeah, she's out by Friday. Good riddance. We'll finally have that office. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I drove to a motel, checked in, and opened my laptop. If Claire thought she could exploit me and walk away unscathed, she was wrong. I started combing through our financial history, every transfer, every email, every text where she'd justified the $1,800. I wasn't just leaving. I was going to make sure she felt the weight of what she'd done. By midnight, I'd found something. An email from Claire, sent a year ago, casually mentioning the $1,800 as your share of the mortgage. Mortgage. They owned the house outright. Mark had bragged about paying it off early. She'd lied to my face, pocketing my money for her own gain. I saved the email, my heart pounding. This was my leverage. I didn't know how I'd use it yet, but I knew one thing. Claire and Mark weren't getting away with this. The motel room smelled of stale coffee and regret, but it was my sanctuary for now. I sat cross-legged on the lumpy bed, my laptop glowing in the dim light, piecing together the puzzle of Claire's deception. That email about the mortgage was just the tip of the iceberg. I dug deeper, scrolling through bank statements, piecing together 2 years of transfers, $43,200 total, wired to Claire's account without a single receipt or breakdown of expenses. My hands shook as I calculated it. That money could have been my fresh start, a deposit on a home, a safety net. Instead, it had fueled Claire's lavish lifestyle. I needed more proof. I remembered Mark mentioning their accountant, a family friend named Greg who handled their taxes. If Claire was pocketing my money, there might be a paper trail. I sent Greg a polite email, posing as a confused tenant. I've been paying $1,800 monthly for my room at Mark and Claire's. Can you confirm if this was reported as rental income? I hit send, my stomach in knots. If Greg replied, I'd have something concrete. If not, I'd find another way. By morning, my phone buzzed with a response. Greg's email was brief but damning. I wasn't aware of any rental income from you. Their taxes show no such payments. My breath caught. Claire hadn't just hidden the money, likely to avoid taxes. This wasn't just personal betrayal. It was potentially illegal. I leaned back, the weight of it sinking in. Claire and Mark had played me for a fool, but I wasn't powerless. I started researching tenant laws in our state. Even though I wasn't on a formal lease, I'd been paying to live there, which gave me rights. Claire's abrupt eviction notice violated the required 30-day notice period. I could fight this legally, but a lawsuit would take time and money I didn't have. No, I needed something faster, something that hit them where it hurt. I called my best friend, Lena, a paralegal with a knack for thinking 3 steps ahead. They screwed you over, Emma, she said, her voice sharp with indignation. You've got that email about the mortgage lie. Use it. Confront them. But don't tip your hand completely. Record everything. I hesitated. Confronting Claire felt like walking into a lion's den. But Lena was right. I needed to see their reaction, to gauge how far they'd go to cover their tracks. I drove back to their house that afternoon, my phone's voice recorder app ready. Claire answered the door, her face twisting into a smirk. Back already? I told you. Friday. I'm not here to beg, I said, stepping inside before she could shut the door. I'm here about the $1,800 you've been taking every month. You called it my share of the mortgage, but you don't have one. Where's my money? Claire. Her eyes widened, just for a second, before she recovered. You agreed to the amount. It covered your stay. Covered what? Exactly. Your new handbag. The office you're building in my room. I held up my phone, showing the email from Greg. Your accountant says you never reported my payments. That's tax fraud. Claire. Mark appeared behind her, his face pale. Emma, let's talk about this. Talk. I snapped. You let her bleed me dry. Mark. My own brother. $43. 200 over 2 years. And you're kicking me out without a word. Claire's smirk faltered. You can't prove anything. Maybe not, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. But I've got enough to make your life messy. The IRS loves tips about unreported income. She laughed, but it was forced. You're bluffing. Try me. I turned and walked out, my heart racing. I didn't have a full plan yet, but I'd rattled her. That was a start. Back at the motel, I mapped out my next steps. Lena suggested filing a small claims case for the return of my money, citing the lack of a lease and Claire's misrepresentation. It wouldn't get me all $43, 200, but it could force them to admit what they'd done. I also drafted an anonymous tip to the IRS, detailing the unreported income. I didn't send it, not yet. It was my ace, and I'd play it when the time was right. As I worked, my phone lit up with a text from Mark. Emma, I'm sorry. Can we talk? Just you and me. My heart ached. I wanted to believe he was genuine, but I'd trusted him before. Still, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop the next day. Maybe he'd give me something answers, an apology, or even a crack in their united front. The coffee shop was quiet when I arrived. Mark sat in a corner, looking older than his 40 years. I didn't know Claire was lying about the mortgage, he said, his voice low. She handled the finances. I thought the $1,800 was fair. Fair. I leaned forward, my voice sharp. You let her take half my income. Mark. You let her kick me out. He rubbed his face, guilt etched into his features. I was weak. Emma. I didn't want to fight her. But I'll make this right. I'll pay you back, whatever it takes. His words stirred something in me, hope. Maybe. Or just the ghost of the brother I used to know. But I couldn't trust him. Not yet. Prove it, I said. Give me my money, or I'm done with both of you. Mark's promise lingered in my mind like a half-forgotten dream. But I wasn't naive enough to pin my hopes on it. I'd spent 2 years trusting him and Claire. And look where that got me broke. Betrayed. And living out of a motel. As I sipped my coffee, watching him drive away, I knew I had to keep moving forward. His guilt might be real, but guilt alone wouldn't get my $43, 200 back. I spent the next day at the library, using their free Wi-Fi to file my small claims case. Lena helped me draft the paperwork, citing Claire's false claim about the mortgage and the lack of a proper eviction notice. The maximum I could sue for was $7, 500 in our state, a fraction of what they'd taken. But it was a start. If I won, it would force Claire to explain herself in court, and that was a victory in itself. I also kept the IRS tip in my back pocket, ready to send if she pushed me too far. By evening, I'd moved into the studio apartment, a cramped, outdated space with peeling wallpaper but a working internet connection. It was mine, and that was enough. I set up my laptop, answered a few work emails, and tried to focus. But my mind kept drifting to Mark's words. I'll make this right. Could he? Or was he just stalling? Protecting Claire like always. My phone buzzed with a new email from Claire. No greeting. No apology, just a demand. You owe us $1,800 for this month. Pay it, or we'll sue you for breach of agreement. I laughed out loud, the sound bitter in the empty room. Breach of agreement. There was no agreement, just her lies. I forwarded the email to Lena, who replied instantly. She's trying to scare you. Don't respond. Let the court handle it. But Claire's audacity lit a fire in me. I opened my laptop and started digging into her social media again, looking for anything I could use. That's when I found it, a post from 6 months ago, buried in her Instagram stories archive. It was a screenshot of her bank balance, captioned, "Living the Dream." The amount, $22. 000. I cross-referenced the date with my bank statements. 2 days earlier, I'd sent her $1. 800. It wasn't proof of theft, but it was another piece of the puzzle. She was flaunting money she hadn't earned, money she'd taken from me. I saved the screenshot and kept searching. Claire's posts were a parade of excess: vacations, jewelry, a new patio set. Mark had mentioned their savings were tight last year. So where was this cash coming from? I started to wonder if I was the only one she'd exploited. I reached out to a mutual friend, Sarah, who'd briefly lived with them before me. "Did Claire ever charge you weird fees?" I texted. Sarah's reply came fast. "Oh, yeah. She wanted $1. 500 a month for a tiny room. Said it was for household maintenance. I moved out after 3 months. Why?" My pulse quickened. There was a pattern. Claire wasn't just greedy, she was running a scam, preying on people who trusted her. I asked Sarah to send me any receipts or messages she had from that time. If I could show a history of her overcharging, it would strengthen my case. The next morning, Mark called. "Claire's freaking out about the $1. 800 you didn't pay," he said. "She's talking about hiring a lawyer." "Let her," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I've got evidence she lied about the mortgage. And I know she didn't report my payments to the IRS. You want to fix this, Mark? Tell her to drop the threats and pay me back." He sighed. "I'm trying, Emma. I found some bank records. She's been moving money into a separate account. I think you're right about her." My heart skipped. "Send me those records, Mark. If you're serious, prove it." "I will. Just give me a couple of days." I hung up, torn between hope and skepticism. If Mark was telling the truth, those records could be the key to unraveling Claire's lies. But I couldn't wait for him. I contacted a local reporter, Jenna, who specialized in consumer fraud stories. I pitched her the idea anonymously: a woman exploiting family and friends, charging exorbitant rent while hiding the income. Jenna was intrigued but needed more evidence. "Get me documents or a witness," she said. "Then we can talk." I spent the rest of the day organizing my proof: the mortgage email, Greg's response, Claire's bank balance screenshot, and Sarah's texts. It wasn't airtight, but it was enough to make Claire sweat. I also prepared for my small claims hearing, set for next month. Lena coached me on what to say, how to present myself as a victim of deception rather than a disgruntled tenant. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and resolve. Claire had underestimated me, thinking I'd slink away quietly. But I was done being her victim. I was building a case, brick by brick, and when it came crashing down, she'd regret ever crossing me. Mark's call came 2 days later, his voice strained. "I've got the bank records, Emma. I'm emailing them now. But Claire can't know I sent them." I opened the email on my laptop, my breath catching as I scanned the documents. They showed transfers from Claire's main account to a secondary $1 one, 800 every month, labeled miscellaneous. My payments. She'd been funneling them somewhere, hiding them from Mark and the IRS. "Thank you, Mark," I said, my voice softer than I meant. "This means a lot." "I'm sorry, Emma. I should have stopped her sooner." He sounded broken, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But sympathy wouldn't undo the damage. I saved the records, adding them to my growing file of evidence. I forwarded everything to Jenna, the reporter, along with a detailed summary of Claire's scheme. She replied within hours, "This is big. If you're willing to go on record, I can run the story next week." I hesitated. Going public would expose Claire, but it would also drag Mark into the mess. He was complicit, yes, but he was still my brother. I told Jenna I'd think about it. Meanwhile, Claire wasn't backing down. She sent another email, this time with a scanned contract she claimed I'd signed. agreeing to the $1.800 monthly payment. It was a clumsy for Jeremy's signature looked traced, and the document was dated after I'd moved in. I almost laughed at her desperation. I forwarded it to Lena, who confirmed it wouldn't hold up in court. She's panicking, Lena said. Keep pushing. I decided to confront Claire one last time, this time with Mark present. I needed to see if he'd stand up to her or fold like always. I drove to their house, my phone recording again. Claire answered, her face a mask of irritation. What now, Emma? I have proof you lied about the mortgage, I said, stepping inside, and bank records showing you hid my payments. I'm giving you one chance to pay me back before I take this to court and the IRS. Mark shifted uncomfortably behind her. Claire's eyes narrowed. You're delusional. You can't prove anything. Then why's your signature on a fake contract? I held up my phone, showing the forged document. And why's my $1.800 showing up in a secret account? Her face paled, but she recovered quickly. Get out, or I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said. I'd love to explain this to them. Mark finally spoke. Claire, stop. She's got the records. I sent them to her. The room went silent. Claire's head whipped toward him, her eyes blazing. You what? She's my sister, Mark said, his voice shaking but firm. You lied to both of us. Claire's composure cracked. She lunged at Mark, screaming about betrayal. But I stepped between them. This isn't about him, I said. This is about you stealing from me. Pay me back, or I'm going public. She froze, her breath ragged. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. How much do you want? She whispered. All of it. $43. $200. That's impossible. She snapped. We don't have that kind of money. Then you shouldn't have taken it, I said, turning to leave. You've got 1 week to figure it out. Back at my apartment, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I'd stood my ground, and Mark had finally chosen a side. But I wasn't done. I called Sarah, who agreed to be a witness in my small claims case, confirming Claire's pattern of overcharging. I also sent Jenna a green light to run the story, but only after the court hearing. I wanted Claire to face the consequences in private before the world knew her shame. The next day, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Greg, the accountant. Emma, I shouldn't be talking to you, but Claire's been calling me in a panic, asking me to backdate rental income records. I refused. I just thought you should know. My heart soared. Claire was scrambling, and her allies were turning on her. I thanked Greg and added his statement to my evidence. The small claims hearing was in 3 weeks, and I was ready. But part of me wondered if Claire would try to settle before then. She was cornered, and cornered people do desperate things. That night, I got a text from Mark. Claire wants to meet tomorrow. She's ready to talk repayment. I stared at the message, my mind racing. Was this a genuine offer? Or another trap? Either way, I'd be ready. I wasn't the broken woman Claire had preyed on. I was Emma, and I was taking my life back. The meeting was set for a neutral coffee shop, far from Claire's pristine suburban bubble. I arrived early, my laptop open to my evidence folder, my phone ready to record. Mark and Claire walked in together, his face tense, hers unreadable. She carried a leather folder, and I wondered if it held another fake contract or something worse. Emma, Claire said, sitting across from me. Let's end this. What do you want? I told you. $43. $200. Every cent you took. My voice was steady, but my heart pounded. She slid the folder toward me. We can't pay that in one go. But here's $10. 000. Cash. Right now. Take it. Drop the lawsuit. And we're done. I opened the folder. A stack of bills stared back at me, crisp and real. It was tempting $10. $000 would cover my deposit and rent for months. But it was a fraction of what she owed, and accepting it meant letting her off the hook. I pushed the folder back. No deal. I want it all, or we go to court. Claire's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. This is generous. Generous. I leaned forward, my voice low. You stole from me for 2 years. You kicked me out with no notice. $10. 000 isn't generous, it's an insult. Mark shifted in his seat. Emma, we're trying to make this right. Claire's willing to negotiate. Negotiate? I turned to him. You let her do this. Mark, you don't get to play peacemaker now. Claire's eyes flashed. You're ungrateful. We gave you a home when you had nothing. You didn't give me a home, I said, my voice rising. You used me. And I have proof, bank records, emails, witnesses. You want to negotiate? Pay me back, or I'm sending everything to the IRS and the press. She flinched, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. You wouldn't dare, she said, but her voice wavered. Try me, I said, echoing my words from our last confrontation. I stood, leaving the folder on the table. You have until the hearing. Make it right, or I will. As I walked out, I felt Claire's glare burning into my back. Mark called after me, but I didn't stop. I'd given them a chance, and they'd tried to buy me off. Now, it was war. Back at my apartment, I called Lena. They offered $10. 000. I said. I turned it down. Good, she said. That was a lowball to shut you up. Stick to the plan. The court will see through her. I spent the next few days preparing for the hearing, organizing my evidence into a clear timeline: Claire's mortgage lie, the bank transfers, Greg's email, Sarah's testimony, and the forged contract. Jenna, the reporter, checked in, eager to run the story. I asked her to wait until after the hearing, but the thought of exposing Claire publicly gave me a surge of power. She'd built her life on appearances: perfect wife, perfect home. I was about to shatter that facade. 2 days before the hearing, Mark showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked haggard, his eyes red. Claire's falling apart, he said. She's terrified of the IRS. She's talking about selling her jewelry to pay you. I crossed my arms. She should be terrified. Why are you here, Mark? I want to help you, he said. I've got $15. 000 in savings. It's yours. No strings. Just don't destroy her. I studied him. Torn. The $15. 000 would help. But it wasn't justice. Claire needed to face the consequences, not just buy her way out. I'll take it, I said finally, but only as a partial payment. I'm not dropping the case. He nodded, defeated. I'll transfer it tonight. True to his word, the money hit my account hours later. It felt like a small victory, but I wasn't done. The hearing was my chance to make Claire answer for every lie, every dollar she'd taken. I practiced my statement, picturing her smug face crumbling as the judge read my evidence. The night before the hearing, I got an email from Claire. No threats this time. Just a single line: I'll pay $20. 000 more if you drop the case. I stared at the screen, tempted. $35. 000 total $15. 000 from Mark. $20. 000 from her would cover most of what she'd taken. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about holding her accountable. I deleted the email and went to bed, ready for court. The hearing was in a small, stuffy courtroom. Claire and Mark sat across from me, her face pale, his eyes fixed on the floor. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, listened as I presented my case: the emails, the bank records, Sarah's testimony. Claire's lawyer argued that I'd agreed to the $1,800, but the forged contract fell apart under scrutiny. The judge's eyes narrowed as she reviewed the evidence. Ms. Thompson, she said to Claire, you have 30 days to pay Ms. Davis $7,500, the maximum allowed in this court. I strongly suggest you settle the remaining amount privately, or you may face further legal action. Claire's face crumpled. Mark reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I felt a surge of triumph, but it was bittersweet. I'd won, but the cost was my relationship with my brother. Still, I'd taken back my power, and I wasn't done yet. The courtroom victory felt like a weight lifted, but it wasn't the end. Claire had 30 days to pay the $7,500, and I knew she'd drag her feet. I also knew the $15,000 from Mark and her $20,000 offer wouldn't come without a fight. But I was ready. I'd spent 2 years under her thumb, and now I was calling the shots. Back at my apartment, I called Jenna. Run the story, I said. I want everyone to know what she did. Jenna's article hit the local news site the next morning. Suburban woman accused of exploiting family with inflated rent. It didn't name me directly, but Claire's name was front and center, along with details of the $1,800 payments and the forged contract. By noon, it was trending on social media, with comments piling up. Disgusting. She's a leech. Who does that to family? I watched Claire's carefully curated Instagram account go private, her perfect image crumbling. Mark called that afternoon, his voice shaking. Emma, why? The story, it's ruining us. Claire's getting hate mail. Her boss called her in for a meeting. She did this to herself, I said, my tone firm. You both did. I gave her a chance to make it right. I'm trying, he said. I sent you the $15,000. I'm begging you. Stop the IRS tip. It'll destroy her. I paused, the weight of his words sinking in. Destroying Claire felt justified, but Mark was caught in the crossfire. I haven't sent it yet, I said, but I will if she doesn't pay the rest. He promised to talk to her, but I wasn't holding my breath. Claire's pride was her armor, and she wouldn't go down without a fight. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a letter from her lawyer, claiming I'd slandered her with the article. Lena laughed when I showed her. It's all true, so it's not slander, she said. She's grasping at straws. I kept working, kept living, but the tension hung over me. Claire sent the $7,500 from the court order, but it came with a nasty note. This is all you're getting. Good luck with your pathetic life. I stared at the words. Her venom no longer a surprise. She still thought she could intimidate me. She was wrong. I reached out to Sarah again, who'd heard about the article. You're a hero, she said. I wish I'd fought back when she did it to me. Her words gave me strength. This wasn't just about might, it was about stopping Claire from hurting anyone else. Sarah agreed to share her story with Jenna, adding fuel to the fire. The article was updated with her account, and Claire's reputation took another hit. A week later, Mark showed up at my apartment again, this time with a check for $20,000. It's from Claire, he said. She's selling some assets. Please, Emma, take it and let this go. I took the check, my fingers trembling. $42,500 total $7,500 from the court, $15,000 from Mark. And now this. It was nearly everything she'd taken. But it wasn't an apology. And it wasn't closure. This doesn't erase what she did, I said, or what you let her do. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I'm leaving her. Emma, I can't live with this anymore. His words hit me like a punch. My brother, breaking his marriage to stand by me. I wanted to hug him, to tell him we'd be okay. But the years of betrayal held me back. Do what you need to, I said, but don't expect me to trust you yet. He nodded, tears in his eyes, and left. I deposited the check. My bank account finally looking like a lifeline instead of a graveyard. But the victory felt hollow. I'd won the money, exposed Claire, but my family was fractured. I wondered if Mark would really leave her, or if he'd crawl back like always. I called Lena, updating her on the payment. You did it, Emma, she said. You took her down. Not completely, I said. The IRS tip is still on the table. Don't send it, Lena advised. You've got the money. Let her live with the shame. I wasn't sure I agreed. Claire's shame was public, but her crime was bigger. I spent the night weighing my options. The IRS tip drafted and ready. Part of me wanted to move on, to rebuild without looking back. But another part, the part that remembered every lie, every smirk, wanted her to face the full consequences. By morning, I'd made my decision. I hit send on the IRS tip, attaching the bank records and Greg's email. Claire had built her castle on my money, and now it was time for it to fall. The IRS tip was a grenade, and I'd pulled the pin. I didn't know how long it would take for them to act, or if they'd act at all, but the weight of sending it felt like a final stand. Claire had taken my trust, my money, and my sense of family. Now, she'd face the consequences of her greed. A week later, Jenna's updated article went viral in our small town. Claire's name was everywhere: local forums, social media, even whispered in the grocery store I'd started frequenting. People I didn't know messaged me, sharing their own stories of Claire's manipulations. A cousin she'd overcharged for a car, a friend she'd borrowed money from and never repaid. She wasn't just a thief. She was a predator, and I'd exposed her. Mark called again, his voice hollow. The IRS contacted us. They're auditing our taxes for the last 3 years. Claire's a wreck. I waited for him to beg me to retract the tip, but he didn't. I moved out, he said. I'm staying with a friend. I'm filing for divorce. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to cheer. Claire was losing everything, but another part mourned the brother I'd lost in this mess. I'm sorry it came to this, I said finally. But you let it happen, Mark. I know, he said. I'm trying to make it right. I'm seeing a therapist. I want to be better, Emma. For you. For myself. His words stirred something in me, a flicker of hope for the future. But I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Take care of yourself, I said, and hung up. With the $42, $500, I paid off my debts and started saving for a better apartment. My remote job was stable, and I took on freelance gigs to rebuild my savings. I even started therapy myself, working through the betrayal and the anger that still simmered. Claire's downfall was justice, but it didn't erase the scars. A month later, I got an email from the IRS, confirming they'd received my tip and were investigating. I didn't know the details, but Jenna's sources said Claire was facing hefty fines and possible criminal charges for tax evasion. Her perfect life was unraveling, and I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not joy. There was no joy in seeing someone destroyed, but a sense that the scales had balanced. I ran into Sarah at the library one day, and we grabbed coffee. You changed everything, she said, her eyes bright. People are talking about Claire, warning each other. You stopped her. I hope so, I said, stirring my coffee. I just wanted my life back. You got it, she said, and you gave others a chance to get theirs. Her words stayed with me. I'd fought for myself, but in doing so, I'd exposed a truth that protected others. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined when I moved into Claire's attic 2 years ago, broken and desperate, but it was the ending I'd earned. I walked home that evening, the autumn air crisp against my skin. My apartment was small, but it was mine. My job was mine. My life was mine. Claire had taken so much, but she hadn't taken my strength. I'd walked away from her house, her lies, her control, and in walking away, I'd found myself. Months later, I heard Claire had moved out of state, her reputation in tatters. Mark was still in therapy, trying to rebuild his life. He sent me a Christmas card, a small gesture I didn't return. Maybe one day we'd talk again. But for now, I was focused on me. I opened my laptop, checking my bank account. The numbers weren't huge, but they were growing. I smiled, closed the laptop, and looked out my window at the world I was building, one free of Claire's shadow. I'd stopped paying. I'd walked away, and I'd won. Not just the money, but my dignity, my future, myself. And that was worth more than $43. 200 could ever buy.